This week we're going to talk about Lady Dimitrescu. How do you say it? Dimitris? That didn't sound right. Let's talk. What up, viewers? What up? What up? Calc Soups here, and today is Friday, April 16th, and that means it's time for a quick recap of the week in video game news. Like I said, the big thing that happened this week was the Resident Evil showcase. Most of it was kind of dedicated to building up more and more Resident Evil hype, or Resident Evil Village hype, I should say. There's going to be a new demo for the game that I think is playable this weekend. I think PlayStation users get early access, and part of the demo is going to be taking place between the village and the castle, and yeah, and it gave us a little bit more story about what we're doing. We're still playing as Ethan Winters, as we've known from previous trailers, but they really kept hitting that hard. They're really setting up kind of the gothic European town that we're going to be in, village, I should say, that we're going to be in. Yeah, I don't think that this gave me too much information. I haven't played any of the Resident Evil demos. I'm kind of saving playing the game until it's actually out. But I think for people who want more stuff to play through, I think there's a lot more content. They also talked about kind of a, how do you say, like a high score. There's like a high score mode that's coming back, like a survival mode. That apparently was in previous Resident Evil games. I haven't played too many of the Resident Evil games, so I don't quite remember this feature, but people were kind of hyped about that. So that was all around kind of Resident Evil. It's still coming out. You know, we still have to wait till May 7th to play it, just around my time of my birthday, so I'm looking forward to playing that. It was about a 30-minute showcase, and the rest of it was kind of dedicated to 25-year celebrations. They had some kind words from pretty prominent people in the games industry talking about you know, what an honor it is and how long, you know, having games that have been around for 25 years, franchises that are still relevant today as they were when they first came out, are really great. Speaking of the games that you know, the Resident Evil games, I didn't start playing until like 4, 5, and 6, which I only played partially. 7 really invigorated my enjoyment of the series, and then going back and playing 2 because it felt like 7 was really fun, and then so now I'm looking forward to 8. So that's kind of been my journey with Resident Evil, and it was just really cool to kind of reflect on the 25-year celebration. They also talked about a pretty cool thing, like they had a couple people come on at the end to kind of talk about some collaboration. One of the big ones was a Dead by Daylight collaboration, which they didn't go into too much detail, but I was really excited for. I'm a big Dead by Daylight fan, and having a Resident Evil, you know, Dead by Daylight has done a lot of partnerships with a lot of really big horror, so it's exciting to see kind of video game horror get in there, because they've already collaborated with like Freddy and Jason, Michael Myers, like every other major horror figure you can think of is already in Dead by Daylight. So it's cool to see them kind of collaborate with Resident Evil to get some Resident Evil killers in there. Could be fun, or even a Resident Evil character to play as, running around Dead by Daylight as you know, Jill or Redfield would be pretty cool. So that was all that I caught from the Resident Evil showcase. I'm still very excited for the game, as I said earlier, but looking forward to seeing more and getting my hands on Resident Evil sometime soon. Another thing that happened this week was the Nintendo Indie Showcase. These are usually my favorite kind of direct style games. They're only about 20 minutes long, nice bite-sized, and they kind of show me a lot of the indie games that I'm going to be playing on my Nintendo Switch, which is basically just Zelda plus indie games. That's what I use my Nintendo Switch for. So I'm really excited whenever I see a Nintendo Indie Showcase, or like I call it an indie. I think at one point they did call it an indie. I think it's called Indie World, and they also had their own Twitter account, which I should start following actually. But let's talk about the dozen or so games that came out. Yeah, there was about 15 or so games that were announced, all kind of smattering out throughout the next 12 months or so. The ones that really caught my eye was the first one, I think was the first one they talked about, was Road 96, which I've been kind of waiting for a procedural a procedurally generated narrative game, and so I'm kind of excited to see more about what's going on with this game. Where the trailers actually did a really good job of like, hey, you're this person and you're going to meet X, Y, or Z, and with them you're going to do X, Y, or Z, and so they really like showcase like the branching narrative and the paths and how like you don't know where it's going to end up. So I thought it was a really cool idea, and I've been waiting to kind of see the procedurally generated narrative to kind of happen. So this kind of was a pretty cool surprise to me and something I'm looking forward to. Another game that caught my eye in the Indie Showcase was The Longing. I just kind of liked the art style. It just seemed like a pretty cool point and click, or not point and click, but like 2D kind of side scroller that you're just like exploring this house, or you know, you're the last descendant of a long dead line or something like that, and so you're just exploring this massive catacombs, and you don't know what's kind of going on, and all of it's like just what are you gonna do when you have like 400 days or 400 hours to kind of play through. It looked like it was in real time, which could be interesting. It's like a cool, interesting mechanic, but I'm not quite sure if that was accurate or if there'd be moments in the game where you leap forward or something like that. But The Longing looked interesting, and let me know what you think down below. Also, anything Annapurna does is always on my radar. The one they had that was called The Last Stop looked really interesting. It had, you know, interesting characters, typical narrative, and everything Annapurna does is just really good. You know, Annapurna being the studio behind Gone Home and What Remains of Edith Finch. So really cool, tight narratives that are really enjoyable. And so a couple of the other games that were coming from them, like Last Stop or Hindsight, you know, just kind of really got in there. And Hindsight kind of reminded me of like it kind of had an Untitled Goose Game kind of art style to it. So that also caught my eye as well. But those were the Indie Showcase games that caught my eye. Let me know if there's any that you thought looked really cool that I missed. They also kind of spoiled at the end, or they kind of had a stinger at the end for Oxenfree 2. The next Ollie Ollie game was coming out, so those ones kind of all caught my eye. But the ones that I talked about, like Road 76 and The Longing and the Annapurna games, those are the ones I'm kind of excited for. So looking forward to playing those sometime in the next 12 months or so. Got a new trailer this week for Pokemon Snap. It's just showing a little bit more mechanics. The trailer is about 6 minutes long, and yeah, it just kind of showed us what we'll be dealing with, where we'll be in the region. I think was one of the kind of they talked about the gameplay loop. So just a little bit more on the mechanics. I feel like it didn't really elaborate too much on like the trailer we had 2 or 3 weeks ago that talked to us about like how we'll have these new kind of abilities to like throw different types of objects and interact with the world a little bit more. So yeah, this one kind of broke down some mechanics, but I don't know that it elaborated too much. But it also did remind me that Pokemon comes out in 2 weeks, so I'm excited to get my hands on that and check that out, as I haven't played a Pokemon Snap game in like 2 decades. So I'm looking forward to playing that again, and not on anything more powerful than an N64. So looking forward to checking that out in the next coming weeks. Another big news report that came in this week was Days Gone, from Bend Studios, the Sony exclusive title with Sam Witwer, is coming to PC next month. So on May 18th, you'll be able to play Deacon St. John as he runs around kind of their whole zombie swarm simulator. That is what I kind of called it, Days Gone. I never actually played this. I think I picked it up on PlayStation Plus, but never actually downloaded it. So this kind of reminds me, again, another game that I should probably pick up and just play through real quickly, see what the game's all about. I think it had mixed reviews, but if it has zombies, stealth action, it's probably up my alley, and I should probably play it anyway. So let me know what you think of Days Gone coming to PC down below in the comments. This rumor kind of inflated very quickly and went away just as quickly. So there was an article that spun up that Square Enix was like shutting down and looking for offers for people to buy them. This was coming from a Bloomberg article in Japan that like Square Enix is shutting down and they're looking for buyers, and who's talking to them? Is it Microsoft? Is it Apple? Is it Amazon? Who's talking to them? You know, what's going on? And pretty much like I don't know, in my newsfeed, they kind of happened at like the same time as like Square Enix comes out publicly, and usually, the companies don't talk publicly if they are getting offers or anything like that. They typically don't come forward or say anything. And Square Enix was just like, nope, we're not talking to anybody. We're not selling the company. We don't know where this came from. Like, shut it down. And yeah, so kind of spun up, and I mean, of course, it got all of the fans like, who's gonna buy and who could buy and who would buy them. And I think that this kind of spins out of like the fact that Microsoft just bought Bethesda, and Bethesda was looking at buying Square Enix a while ago. So it was just kind of an interesting. I also saw a tweet this week that was just like, what's Microsoft's next kind of big purchase, and what are they going to buy? And it was like, do we put Square on there? Do we put Capcom? Who do we put on there? And I thought that was kind of just a good thought experiment, but some of this is dragging up some old stuff of like Bethesda was looking at Square Enix at one point just to be the pentultimate RPG kind of studio. So I thought it was interesting, but it doesn't look like that's happening anytime soon. So Square Enix, and it also seems weird considering they were talking about, they had like their E3 plan. They just did their like Square Enix Presents last month. So I don't think you would like have this big push of like, here's all the stuff we're working on if like you were, in talks with someone or in conversations with another company to be bought. Like usually I think you would wait on some of that stuff, but hey, what do I know about M&A? So interesting stuff, but Square Enix is not being bought, so nothing to worry about. You'll still have all your Final Fantasies coming out in the next whenever. Ubisoft has officially announced their E3 plans. They're going to lead us off, apparently. So E3 is planned for the 12th through the 15th of this year, June 12th to 15th. Ubisoft sounds like they will be the first ones, with their showcase happening at noon Pacific on the 12th. So, for all the companies that are going to be there, like we talked about last week, Ubisoft seems like they're going to be leading us off. I expect Microsoft happening probably that same day. But I know that E3 is just kind of all up in the air and in a jumble. So what we would expect is not what is probably going to happen this year, considering we didn't even have an E3 last year, so we have nothing to base it on. So, but Ubisoft has, officially put their foot in the ground. This is when they're happening. Everybody else can plan accordingly. So good job, Ubisoft. Sony has invested a rather large amount of money in Epic. I think this has happened before. I think I've reported this every 6 months or so, that Sony just keeps putting more and more money. The article that I read that I'll have a link to in the description below talked about Epic being worth like $29 billion and like, how much market cap they have, and they've gotten $1 billion in investments, and a lot of that is coming from Sony. I'm wondering how much of this partnership has to do with the fact that they have Kratos and Fortnite. That Aloy, actually, this is news as well. Aloy is now going to be in Fortnite to go with their whole hunters kind of theme. Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that the article that I read talked about it like an investment in like this kind of multiverse that Epic is kind of building, which I thought just kind of sound like marketing gobbledygook or like a PR talk. But I think a lot of it is like the underlying investment in the Unreal Engine and a partnership, to get more stuff into Fortnite. Like, I think that's what that felt like at the end of the day, more than like, an investment in Epic's future or anything like that. So big chunk of change coming to Epic from Sony, and I think we as consumers get to reap the benefits with, Aloy and Kratos and other first party characters coming to Fortnite. Another big piece of news this week was there's a fifth version of the Switch Lite, and for the most part these have all just been swapping around colors, but there's a fifth color for the Switch Lite. Currently I think it launched with like gray, yellow, and pink, gray, yellow, and turquoise, and then they added coral soon after that, or at the end of 2020, and now the new one that's coming out is a navy blue color. It's a pretty dark blue, and it's coming sometime soon. I don't remember what the exact dates were, but there will be another color for the Switch Lite. For those of you who are interested in that, I'm more interested in seeing about what's going to happen with Nintendo Switch 4K, whether or not that's going to happen. But if you're looking for another Switch Lite in a different color, You got a navy blue one coming out this year, so check that out. Oculus keeps investing more and more money in upgrading their Oculus Quest 2, which is, I think, as we talked about a week or two ago, is the like best-selling VR headset, gaming VR headset on the market right now. So, you know, Quest 2 is doing great. They're putting more and more into it. So the big news this week was that they're upgrading it to allow for, I think the technology was called AirLink. I think it allows you to wirelessly tether your Oculus VR headset to your PC, so you can play PC games tethered to your Oculus. I would hope that this wouldn't have any kind of delay, because as we know with VR, like delays can cause a lot of, you know, head and eye and stomach and nausea, you know, any motion related stuff. So hopefully there's no delays in this. But I also see it as an effort to, I believe they did this previously by having you actually physically plug in. And of course, you know, Oculus Quest, I think, is selling because it's completely unattached. So they're trying to invest in a way to prevent any kind of cords from being attached to it. So now you can wirelessly tether to your PC, so you can play PC games on your Oculus Quest 2 untethered. Whew, that's not a mouthful. I don't know what is, but that was my research into Oculus Quest and their kind of big update, which again keeps lending it to more and more why I'm looking at Oculus Quest, why I'm looking at the Oculus Quest 2, although PSVR is still kind of somewhere in my mind of where am I going to land. So, and I don't necessarily want to buy both, but I will if I have to. No, I'm just, you know, I still haven't put my foot down and picked which VR headset I want to get into or invest in. So, but I am hearing good things about the Quest 2, but I already have a PlayStation, so it's all up in the air. But enough about my VR woes. Last but not least, this week, Mass Effect Legendary Edition is still coming out May 14th, but it had a bunch of big kind of news articles this week that I just wanted to run through. It has gone gold. For those of you who don't know, that aren't in the industry, going gold on a game typically means that a game is now being put on discs. So, you know, in the future, kids, when you're thinking about putting physical games on, you know, physical data on physical discs, that's what going gold was. It's a little bit of an archaic term, but it usually meant that back in the day, it meant that like the game was done and finished and we didn't have to worry about it anymore. Like all the data is done with it. Obviously, that's not true nowadays because you have day one patches and all that kind of stuff, which is the same kind of thing that I'd say every time I talk about a game going gold. But Mass Effect is ready to go. They'll still be working on it up until the 11th hour, but it is now being printed on discs and being sent out there, so it is officially unofficially done. So we don't have to worry about that anymore. And also, especially nowadays, actually, that's another thing is it kind of says like the game won't be delayed anymore. You know, if the game was to be delayed, like you wouldn't say we've gone gold, but also the game's delayed or anything like that. So, you know, in these uncertain times, going gold has some meanings. It means the game's not going to be delayed and that we're getting ready to ship. So don't need to worry about that. Also, the game is coming with a lot of bells and whistles. You know, modern bells and whistles. They put a lot of time and effort into how the game looks, and I think they're doing it right by adding kind of a photo mode added to Mass Effect Legendary Edition. So you'll be able to take all the pictures that you want. I think I'm always surprised that I'm more surprised when a game doesn't have photo mode than a game does, because a lot of these games look really good, and I think a lot of people really want to take the photos to make the game look good and get that, capture those really cool moments. My wife actually uses a photo that she's captured in game as like her background on her PlayStation, which is something I should probably do from time to time just to kind of encapsulate some memories. But yeah, I think photo modes, I don't know how much time or investment go into making a good photo mode, but I always think the benefit for like advertisement or people kind of getting out there and expressing themselves is worth it as far as photo modes are concerned. And then last in the kind of Mass Effect trilogy of news that I'm running through was a pretty cool comparison video, just side-by-side comparisons. Definitely look, you know, when you're comparing Mass Effect 1 to kind of modern specs, it definitely looks dated. I still don't, you know, it's not photorealistic, and I don't know that that's what they were going for. So I take that with a grain of salt when I'm doing the side-by-side comparisons. It definitely looks good. All of the textures look great and are kind of polished up to 4K, but you know, I don't know if I expected photorealistic, and I don't know that they promised it, but maybe that was something that I was kind of expecting, and things still kind of look a little bit cartoony, and I think that's kind of what they're going for. But it was pretty cool to kind of see how much light can be brought into a scene, you know, in kind of these games when you have something like, you know, 15 years difference between a game and its re-release. So interesting stuff to check out down in the comments. Let me know what you think down below. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this content. If you do, follow, like, and subscribe to me on YouTube and Twitch. I'll have links down below in the description so you can see more great content like this. I hope you have a super day. I hope you have a super weekend. And I hope you have a super day. Bye!